All right, we are making our way through the Pittsburgh posture. I feel like maybe I should put that back up here so we don't bury the lead. And we're looking at dimensions of the Pittsburgh posture, contours of the Pittsburgh posture. What did I say? I'm in symposium mode when I teach symposium on Wednesday, and I just do pop quizzes in class the whole time. What did I say is the overarching posture, or the way to describe the Pittsburgh posture in 2 words? Anybody remember? It encompasses the whole thing. Tough love, or that's the nice sanitized evangelical way, is resilient affection. Tough love. And we'll just put that in parentheses there. Resilient affection, tough love. And we've been looking at some of the contours of this tough love and what does it mean to be the church in this place. We live in Pittsburgh. It's not by accident. We talked about a number of things. If I go back in my notes, we started with uncompromisingly biblical, and then followed that up with confronting sin directly, thinking Christianly. We talked about confessional standards. What does it mean to be confessional? To eschew pluralism and to say there's one standard and to inform our thinking. We talked about Reformed Catholicity, or the ecumenical spirit that is truly ecumenical and not compromisingly ecumenical. We've talked about being a fearless church in such a fearful world. We need a fearless church. We talked about pro-family. I think that's where we ended, but I did want to just add one little tidbit to that discussion. The reason that we're pro-family, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that we do want to recognize that Scripture informs for us, or reveals to us, that God has established 3 governments upon the earth. There's the government of the family, there's the government of the church, and there's the government of the state. And when we think government, we think state. Another way we might say it is kind of a word that I appreciate and maybe might be more on point, is economy. There are 3 economies. And what's an economy? In the Greek, it means household rules, the way things are governed, or the way things that are established and held together, and the way things operate is an economy. And so there's the economy of the family, the economy of the church, and the economy of the state. All 3 are instituted of God. The state, here's some music back there. I know what Peter's doing. That's a preview of what's to come tonight. So come back tonight if you don't want to know what that's all about. The state is actually instituted of God. It's established by God, and God has given the state the sword as a defender for justice and a punishment for the wicked. God has given the family an economy and responsibilities for building children, creating children, building society, a ministry of welfare and care within the family. And the church is given the ministry of word and sacrament. We're called to preach the good news. We're called to share the sacrament, to provide the sacrament, and we're also called to affirm and clarify, even for the state, what is moral. There's a responsibility between the church and the state. What happens if the church has been given the responsibility of the state? I'm sorry, what am I saying? If the church has been given the responsibility of morality and the church goes silent, what do you think will happen to the state? Say again? It'll pick its own, right. What'd you say?
Mass shutdowns and people won't go to church.
That's also right, yep. Shut down, the government will shut you down and keep you at home and throw barnacles and shackles all over you and tell you what you can do and what you can't do. But you'll be safe, that's right. You can go out and protest, right. Make no mistake, the state will have a morality. It just depends on whether or not it'll be informed by Christ or not. And so to the extent that we have separated church and state, which there's reasons for that, and not all of which are problematic or bad, because they are distinct governments. We don't want the family to be entirely identified with the church, or the church entirely identified with the state. There's connection and overlap, but they're not the same thing. Whenever the church takes up the sword, bad things happen. That's how you get the Inquisitions. That's how you get the Crusades. Crusades are a mixed bag, but it's mixed, and there's problems there. Some good things happen, but some bad things happen too. Conversion does not happen at the point of a sword. That's a different religion. What do we call that religion? Islam. That's exactly right. And so the church has been given the ministry of word and sacrament. We convert by proclamation, not even necessarily by appeal. Do you want to believe in Jesus? That's not the way the church has been. The church has not been called to offer an invitation. The church has been called to make a declaration. Christ is Lord. Christ is King. He owns the world. He owns your life, and your responsibility is to acknowledge that and to submit to his lordship. We declare. Now, in our declaration, we also do want to make appeals, but it's not necessarily a matter of your choice, which is to say, evaluate all the options there and decide what you like best. The church has a responsibility to say, this is the best, this is what's right, this is compelling in your life, it's commanding in your life, it's controlling in your life, and you should submit to it. How you doing, Trinity? You look so cute. I can't hardly even pay attention anymore now that you're here. It's so cute. All right, so we want to be pro-family. We want to be pro-family, pro-church, and pro-state, but we want to be pro-family in terms of recognizing that there's a responsibility that we as a church have, not only to declare what's right and good and true to the state, but to declare what's right and good to the family. What's right, good, and true to the family. Yes?
To me, this can't be overstated enough. Like, when we think of government, there's this fourth in there called individual.
Yeah, right.
And we tend to think of family and church as something that describes who I am. So the individual is over the family and the church. So my family defines who I am, and that's really important to me. My church defines who I am, and that's really important. Instead of, like, even me as a leader of my house, who I am is governed by my family, and who I become is formed by my family. Mm-hmm. Who I become is formed by my church, and to some degree my state as well. Mm-hmm. I am in submission to all three. In our society, we really only recognize the individual and the state. Those are the only two government. We have a two-government society. That's right. Yep.
They try to vacate the family.
They are trying to vacate the family. It's an excellent point. The state today is trying to vacate the family and the church and to elevate the self. The self is not a government. That's what socialism is. Yep. So we have a responsibility to acknowledge and to maintain the governments that God has established, to recognize their spheres of responsibility and authority, to affirm it, to work with it, and to encourage it. The Bible does have a conception of the individual. We will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ individually. We will all stand before Christ and have to give an account for what we did, the deeds in the body, as Paul says, to give an account for what we did. We have to individually believe. There's a corporate dimension to belief, which is why we understand baptism to be covenantal, even as we baptize Trinity. She's been baptized into the covenant community. We have a responsibility to her, but faith also, she needs to have faith personally, directly, and individually. So there is a conception of the individual, but the individual is not a government. The governments are family, church, and state. All right. The Pittsburgh posture recognizes them, works within them. And we're going to get to this is important when we get to this issue, which is pro-reggae. We're pro-family and we're pro-reggae. Yeah.
I'd add one other thing. I think the problem with the modern state and modern politics is they have no recognition of the lane of the family and recognition of the lane of the church.
Yep.
They think that they ought to subsume those things.
Yep.
And even mainstream politicians believe that.
Yeah. Shut up, give me your kids. You don't own your kids.
Well, don't get me
Yeah, let's not get started.
started. Do a whole class on this subject.
Yeah. Yep.
To me, is the essence of the problem politically
Yeah.
in America.
Now, I'll just say parenthetically, there have been laws. Obergefell actually eliminates it eliminates the family. You now no longer have any legal standing to your family because of same-sex marriage being. And there's a it's a little bit complicated, but there's a way of connecting all the dots to demonstrate how that decision actually vacates your rights to your kids. But it has done that, and we're waiting for that to work itself out culturally and in the courts. But that decision has vacated your rights as a parent, and now we have to fight for that. We have to defend that. We see that. I have mixed feelings about this, and I'll share why in just a second. But we see the state trying to take action on vacating your rights as a parent right here in our own town. That's where I'm going, is in our school district. Our school district decided that they were going to teach, Mount Lebanon was going to teach first graders about gender fluidity and gender, what was it? Gender what? Gender non-binary, all the crap. Yeah, all the stuff, all the gender stuff. And they didn't tell the parents. And some parents found out. You didn't hear about this, Mike? Oh, yeah. It was in the Wall Street Journal. It made national news. And I know, Trinity, it's terrible. And so the parents found out, and the parents went to court, and they went, did it go to the Supreme Court? I can't remember if it went to the Supreme Court. Did it go?
Well, the similar case
one in
that went
Michigan.
to the Supreme Court was Montgomery County, Maryland.
Okay.
The court decision in Mount Lebanon was ruled on by a federal judge.
Federal judge. Okay, so the federal judge said, Mount Lebanon, you're out of your lane. You shouldn't have done this. You have to at least inform parents of what's happening so they can opt out. Now, on one hand, I celebrate the fact that the judge upheld parental rights. If you think it's now safe to send your kids to Mount Lebanon, think again. They will continue to try. This is not going to stop. Yes.
Well, inside baseball, it goes beyond that.
Okay.
So the best practice right now, according to the School Counselors Association, if you have a child who thinks that they might be transitioning to another gender, they can set up what's called a gender support plan. And the school is not allowed to tell the parents in that case. Teachers are told you are not allowed to tell the parents that this child is considering becoming a different gender.
Is that because of HIPAA laws?
That's what they try to do, but it's an official document called
Okay.
a gender support plan.
Yeah.
That's the best practice. That's considered best practices. You don't tell, because the old argument, would you rather have an alive son or a dead daughter?
Right.
They use that language. So instead, we're supposed to stay quiet. We've had teachers like email parents with the wrong name, and the parents are like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
It's gonna blow up.
Yeah, we're not off the road. We just slowed the path down. Mike, did you have a question? Just some indignation that you want to? Yeah.
You can opt out. It should be an opt-in. If you want to do this, let us know.
Right. Yeah.
It should be an opt-out.
Well, what it should be is not in the school at all because it's not true, and
It shouldn't be a responsibility of the parents to
yeah.
opt out.
Right.
It should be their responsibility,
Yeah.
it should be their choice to opt in if they so choose.
Right.
But I agree, it shouldn't be in schools at all.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, and not to take this further down, because this is probably different than what you were planning to speak today, but it varies school district to school district, but most in Allegheny County are gonna lean toward what Andy
Right.
said.
Precisely.
It also it's based on the age level. For younger kids,
Yeah.
there might be more disclosure to parents, but when you're getting to the older kids, don't expect someone's gonna say something. And in my opinion, the counselors, and no offense to anyone who's a counselor here,
Yeah.
but even in the Catholic school system, which is why we pulled our kids from the Catholic school, the AIU counselors,
Yep.
they are not gonna be pro-family or pro-parents.
Right.
So that's
Yeah. So the church has a responsibility to protect the family, to support the family, to encourage the family, because the state is sterile. They won't make. They don't. The left is sterile. They're not making kids. They have to have kids to supply their programming. They need the capital. They need the workforce, and so they'll steal your kids. It's Animal Farm all over again. Yeah, which is socialism, Animal Farm. So we want to support the family. We want to recognize the church, and the church has a relationship to both the family and the state, and therefore we want to be pro-reggae, not Rastafarian, but what do we mean by pro-reggae? This is this Latin? I know I keep asking you to get. Please forgive my constant referrals to my better over here, Kyle, but he keeps me straight. It's Latin, and it was the title of one of Abraham Kuyper's books. Abraham Kuyper we discussed, I think, when we were talking about Reformed Catholicity. He was a Dutch theologian, newspaper man. He was one of these polymaths. He was good at like 10 things. He was a theologian, newspaper, and he was the prime minister of the Netherlands and wrote a lot of theology. Late in his life, well, he's the guy that said, "Not 1 square inch of this terrestrial ball in which Christ does not declare mine." He developed sphere sovereignty, was one of the theological categories that he helped to develop. Well, late in his life and career, he wrote, is it multi-volume? I can't remember. 3-volume set called Pro Reggae. And reggae is Latin for king, regal, pro-king. And so what Kuyper is saying, and you've heard us say sometimes, it's my new favorite way to say cheers is to say Christ is king. You know, if you're at a party and there's a toast, Christ is king. We're going to toast to Christ being king. Christ is king, and so we're pro-reggae. Now, to say that Christ is king, you have to make a decision. Is that going to be inert? Is that going to be abstract? Is that going to be conceptual? Do we declare that Christ is king in my heart? Do we declare that Christ is king in my thinking? Or is Christ actually king? What do we think about that? Yes. Yeah. That's where I was going to go, is in the Great Commission, if there's any ambiguity or doubt about Christ being pro-reggae himself, it's in the end of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28. Verse 16, now the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them, and when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. How much authority? All authority. In heaven and on earth. Yeah. Is his authority on earth just resident in our hearts and our minds? Or is he king of the leaves and the stones and the gravel and the earthworms and all the other things? If he actually is king today, right here and right now, of everything, then that means something. It should inform our way of, not just our way of understanding, but our way of behaving, our way of living, our way of engaging in the world. Now, a pro-reggae sentiment is going to be part and parcel and inform something that's being hotly debated right now. I'm going to write something on the board that's scandalous, all right? Hold on a second. Bum, bum, bum. Christian nationalism. How many of you have heard of the term or the phrase Christian nationalism? What is Christian nationalism? Somebody tell me. I need to know.
I am a Christian and I love my nation.
Okay.
Therefore, I am a Christian nationalist.
You are a Christian nationalist. Okay.
That boils it down really, probably way past what should be boiled down.
Yep. That's one definition I've heard is I'm a Christian. I love my nation. Therefore, I'm a Christian nationalist. Yes, Chad. One definition that's been proffered is the idea that we should stop making God angry. If he's king of the world and he actually has all authority on heaven and earth, then we should listen to him and stop doing things that make him angry. We as a nation have murdered 6 million babies. 60 million. I'm sorry, I was off by a factor of 10. Only a factor of 10. 60 million lives murdered since Roe v. Wade. Do you think that makes God angry? Or is he indifferent to that? Maybe we as a country should not do things that make God angry. As Alyssa? You have something? Oh, right.
So the way that I've heard of it, it explained to me, Christian nationalism is proclaiming Christ and his rule on this earth, starting with the family.
Yep.
And then established in the church, and then it automatically establishes within the nation.
Yeah.
If it goes in that order, and it automatically happens like that. We are a Christian nation.
Yep. Another important Christian nationalism type text to keep in mind is Psalm chapter 2. This is actually Christian scripture, even though it's in the Old Testament. And this is speaking about Jesus, as all of both the Old Testament and the New Testament are witnesses to Christ, two witnesses to Christ, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And this is what the psalmist says: "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The king of the earth sets themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord, against his anointed," that's Christ, who's king, "saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in heaven laughs." Christ is laughing. The Lord holds them in derision. "Then they will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the ends of the earth your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron and dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Now therefore, O kings of the earth, the nations," the psalmist is referring to, "be wise, be warned, O rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. Blessed are all who take refuge in him." Is the psalmist unclear about the situation? Is this abstract? Is this something that we believe in our hearts and our minds, and that's as far as it goes? Is this locked in time, only referring to the nations that were in view when the psalmist wrote this, or is this referring to all the nations of the earth? These are the kinds of questions that have to be wrestled with, that have to be reconciled with. What does it mean if Christ is king? What does that mean? It's a question that is, I think, been lost. The authority of God and the authority of Christ, and I think there's absolute room for some nuance here in terms of the founders and things like that, and their understanding of providence or the Almighty. There seems to have been a distancing of Christ there, but they certainly had a conception of God as being the Lord of all. We want to tighten that up and say Christ, it's Jesus Christ, is Lord of all. He is the King of everything. Yes, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, I've not heard Christian nationalism, anybody try to define it until this morning.
Okay. You're welcome. All right.
I think the term has come up recently, and by recently I mean within the last several years, as a pejorative.
Yes, it's definitely a pejorative. Yeah. Now, I will also say there's another thing called, that I will just say on the front end, bad, okay? It's ethno-Christian nationalism. Well, we'll just put the ethno before that. Ethno-Christian nationalism, which is flirting with Nazism and fascism, that's unhealthy. And they're trying to get in the mix and promote certain things that are tragically confusing the situation and complicating the conversation. And so to the extent that you come across these ethnotypes, just give them the big X. We're not listening. What's that?
They should be angry with us too. You know what I mean? Like if we're doing things the right way. Like go back to the three governments. Like it's the job of the church to tell the state you are wrong and you need to stop. Right? When we go to Harrisburg, kids,
right,
in the March for Life, we're telling the state stop killing
the baby. Yeah. And why are we doing that? We're doing that because Jesus told us to do it. Yeah.
Jesus is king, and our weapons are not guns.
Right.
or swords.
Right.
That's the state. The state wields the sword. Our weapons are scripture.
Yep. And they're powerful.
Right.
They're
Way more powerful.
way more powerful. Yeah. And so our job is to wield them responsibly. What's the old song? Hide it under a bushel? No. How's that go, Alyssa? This little light of mine. Well, your light is it's a flamethrower. This is what we're supposed to be doing. And we stick it under a bushel. And we say, no, we're not going to shine that because somebody might become uncomfortable with it. Somebody might be offended by it. I think Christian nationalism is a big category, and a lot of things can be said about it, and the ethno thing really complicates it, and there's some real problems with that. And so I think it's worthy of an extended conversation, which is why Peter, Kyle, and I did the podcast on Who's Afraid of Christian Nationalism. But if the only thing that you get from Christian nationalism relative to the Pittsburgh posture, if the only thing you get is one thing, I hope it's this. This is the thing I really want to press forward. We are not going to support in this church the bifurcation or the dualism of the private-public distinction, okay? Which is a product of secularism, which has, and it's a method of the state to try to silence the church and take over the family, is to say, you can believe whatever you want. You can believe Christ is king, you can affirm Christ is king, you can salute to Christ, you can have your Christian flag, as long as you keep it in the four walls of your church. As long as you keep it in the four walls of your house. As long as you keep it retained and quarantined in your heart. Christ can be king in your heart all day long, 7 days a week, every day of the year. That's what secularism wants to say. But when it comes to the public sphere, shut up, sit down, we're in charge. That framing has to be resisted. First, it has to be named that that's what it is. Second, we have to repent that we've bought into it, that we've been complicit in saying, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We'll just be quiet. And our church, it's almost as if Beverly Heights Church, it's one of the few churches in Mount Lebanon that's in a residential area. You know, the other churches are in Uptown and things like that. Is there another church that's in residence? Oh, Sunset Hills? Yeah, I guess maybe we're not. I still think we're the only on a lot of everything. But
Operative word there is church.
church, yeah, that's right. Christian church. But we're in a residential neighborhood, all right? And the modern conception is you can be in a residential neighborhood, but there's kind of like this invisible force field that has to be erected around it, you know? And you guys, isn't it nice and convenient that you can walk to church if you want to, and you can participate if you want to participate in those rituals and those weird beliefs and eat babies and things like that. As you know, as the rumors went in the early church, they were accused of cannibalism because they were conflating baptism and the Lord's Supper, and so, oh, you guys eat babies. All right, that's weird, but you know, as long as you burn a pinch of incense to Caesar, as long as you do the civic kinds of duties that you are responsible in doing and acknowledge Caesar publicly, then we'll let you be Christians. Now, why were Christians slaughtered in the persecution in the early church? Because they refused to burn incense to Caesar. Because they wanted the church to say, you have to say that Caesar is Lord. And they said no. If you haven't read The Martyrdom of Polycarp in Fox's Book of Martyrs, it's not very long. How many of you have heard of Polycarp? And if you haven't read it in a while, just go back and read it again. It is unbelievable. It will change your life. The man was 80-some years old, I think 83 or 86. And they were trying to coerce him to burn incense to Caesar. And he said, no, I won't do it. And I remember in one of the scenes, they're trying to appeal to him, saying, "You're old. What's the big deal? You know, just say down with the atheists." And they accused the Christians of being atheists because they wouldn't acknowledge Caesar as Lord and as a God. and he's in the Colosseum, and he just defiantly looks at all the Romans and says, "Down with the atheists." He gets eaten by a lion because he won't bend the knee to Caesar. He won't bend the knee to Caesar because he believes that Christ is Lord. He gave his blood. And as Tertullian said, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. The martyrs gave their lives, and the church grew as a result. We are the direct beneficiaries of the blood of Polycarp. Do we understand that? We are the direct, like down the line over time, so maybe it's not one-to-one direct, but it's directionally direct beneficiaries of the blood that Polycarp spilled. And how easy it is for us, given the cultural landscape, for us to just say, that's not a big deal. I can work with the divide. I can work with the private-public distinction. I can burn a little pinch of incense to Caesar. I can get away with that. It's okay. My conscience will allow it. We can't. We can't allow our conscience to become accustomed to be okay with that. If Caesar's 1% Lord, then Christ is not Lord at all. It's kind of like the Ten Commandments. You break one, you break them all. Is that what Calvin said? Was that Calvin? You break one, you break them all. If you have a little bit of allegiance to Caesar, Christ is not king. And Christ insists on being king. So we should respond accordingly. Pro rege. What do you guys think? Anything else you want to talk about on that? Have I made my case convincingly? All right. We want to be generational, not provincial. This is connected to the family thing. And helps to elucidate that a little bit. Provincial means that you're unconcerned with regions outside of a capital city, of a country, especially when regarded as unsophisticated or narrow-minded. To be provincial is to be unconcerned with regions outside of your own city or your own country, especially when regarded as unsophisticated or narrow-minded. This is the French. We're talking about the French here. That was a joke. I'm sorry. As they look down their nose at us. We have, I think, adopted, the evangelical church has adopted a certain provincialism when it comes to the generations. The church has for many, many years been working to terraform the church according to the tastes, according to the preferences, according to the desires of one generation, or one moment in time. There was a generation that said, get rid of the stained glass windows. There was a generation that said, let's pull out the pews and put in luxury seats, big cushy seats. There was a generation that said, let's shelve the hymn books and let's bring in the praise choruses. There was a generation that said, let's get rid of the pipe organ and bring in the drums and the guitar. There was a generation that said, let's not worry about the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed every Sunday. Let's have topical sermons that speak about pressing issues that you're experiencing. Here's a 3-week or 6-week sermon series on how to deal with your angry teenage daughter. Here's 6 weeks on how to deal with the rise of interest rates in America, or something like that. How to deal with, have you seen the sermon series? It's based on Frozen. You guys didn't hear about that? The sermon series based on the movie Frozen. And you don't have to travel to California to get that. You could just go down to the Bible Chapel a few years ago, And they did a summer sermon series based on the movie Frozen.
There was a sermon series. Matrix. I was just going to say that.
The Matrix. Well, the Matrix, maybe I could. Nope. Holy nope. Nope. Big no. No, I remember hearing about that. Provincial, unconcerned about generations. I can't remember who it was that said this. It might have been Chesterton. He said, if we really want to be democratic, if we really want to support a democratic orientation or an ideal, then Chesterton said, then the past gets a vote. We should let the past have a vote too if we really want to be democratic. And the past has a lot to say about what we're doing, what the church should be doing, what the church should be focusing on, what the church should be promoting. And the music of the church, let's just focus on the music for a second. The music of the church was hard fought and won over generations. Not everything in the Trinity hymnal is great. I will grant that. There are some better hymn books than the Trinity hymnal, but it's a lot better than the Peace USA hymnal that we had. And hymnals as a concept, or hymnals as a product, represent a process. There's 700 and some odd hymns in the Trinity hymnal. That does not represent all the hymns that were written. There's only a handful of them in there that were from Martin Luther. Martin Luther didn't write just 2 or 3 hymns. He wrote many hymns. But the church, over the course of hundreds of years, have worked hard to say, but these are the ones we really need to be possessing. These are the ones we need to be continuing to sing. Of the Father's Love Begotten, anybody know that one? It's a kind of a Christmassy, Adventy one. If you go into the Trinity hymnal, that's I think a 3rd or 4th century hymn, if I remember right. Of the Father's Love Begotten. How's the rest of it go? Where's Alyssa when I need her? She left. Chad, you know it? Yeah, what is it? I don't know the text, but I know the... Yeah, that's what I mean, the text. Of the Father's love begotten, something worlds to be. He is Alpha and Omega. It's good theology. Let's just say that. It's good theology. There's a reason why the church has retained it over the years. And we as a church, an entire generation said, we don't need that. And you know why they didn't need that? There's a great chapter in Warren Cole Smith's book, Lover's Quarrel with the Evangelical Church. And in the chapter, he shows how the market forces rewrote the church's hymnal. And he goes into great detail. He was a news guy, so he does a lot of research, and he builds his case with evidence. And when contemporary Christian music became a thing, and there were before the internet, everybody was consuming contemporary Christian music through radio stations. And every Christian radio station across the country had a demographic of a target audience. And her name was Becky. Becky was an archetype. It's kind of like Saddleback Sam. Has anybody heard of Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life, Purpose-Driven Church? They talk about a composite figure called Saddleback Sam that they were trying to attract. Well, the contemporary Christian music scene had a composite person named Becky. She was a mom, soccer mom in a van with 3.2 kids. Life's kind of stressful. She wants to just feel better about her situation, and so they would play music that would appeal to her. What was K-Love's tagline? Positive, encouraging K-Love. Guess who that message was for? Becky. So then here's what happens. So Becky makes a phone call to the radio station and says, I want to hear such and such a song. And of course, the radio station wants to play it because they want Becky's the market and they want her listening so that they can sell advertisement revenue. And the church starts looking around saying, well, what's attractional to the Beckys? What's attractional out there? Oh, they're singing I don't know, what was some garbage song that we sang in the 90s? Anybody remember? What was some Michael W. Smith song? What's the one we sing in Matins all the time about the honor, glory, yeah, whatever it is. All right, whatever it is. So they're playing that, and the Christian, the worship leader says, well, we have to sing that song, because that's what Becky's interested in. That's what's going to bring people into the church. And so they jettison "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God." They jettison "Of the Father's Love Begotten" to sing what is popular and of interest to Becky. So who wrote the hymnal from the 1990s to 2020? Becky. Not the church. Becky wrote it. Becky developed our hymnal. Now, I like Becky. I'm married to a Becky. We have 3 kids. I have a minivan. She's, I get it. I love my Becky. I also don't want my Becky making decisions about what we're singing in church, as much as I love her. The church needs to do that. So, "Of the Father's Love Begotten" is unmetered, and so it's not immediately obvious how to sing it. You have to be trained in it. I got you in a second, Chad. You have to be trained in it. And that's the point. You have to be trained in it. You have to learn. You have to submit yourself to it and to grow in it. And as you learn the music of the church, and as you come to hear and appreciate the text, that does something to you. It shapes you and it forms you in a particular way. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I think we can see this manifested certainly in the musically literate phase of who the church is. Certainly even 50 years ago, you don't even have to go back very far. People could read the music out of the hymn book in 4 parts.
Right.
And now we've distilled that down to, just looking at the words on the screen.
Yep.
With any music.
Yep.
And I think this is one of the reasons why Alyssa has been so adamant in the last couple of summers about learning the songs and learning to sing in 4 parts. Right. Yep. So Marva Dawn wrote a book in the 90s when this was really, at the forefront and vanguard of the debate and the worship wars in the church. She wrote a book called "Reaching Out Without Dumbing Down," and she talks about the replacement of the hymn book in the church and how significant and damaging that is. When you have a hymn book, you have all 4 parts. When you have a screen, you have no parts. To just give up on 4 parts, we gave up more than we realized. We got provincial. We didn't appreciate the wisdom of generations that said, something happens to you, something happens to your church, something happens to your town if you sing in 4 parts. Now that might sound like a crazy thing to assert, but I am telling you, this is where I love Tom's admonition. I believe down to my socks that if we're a congregation that knows how to sing the great hymns of the faith, the Psalms of the faith in 4-part harmony, it will change you for the better. It will change our church for the better. It will make us into the kind of place that God wants us to be, so that we can be the church in our town, so that we can it'll put iron in your soul for the Iron City. That's what you need. To be generational is to remember the past and to think about the future. It only takes one link in a chain. If you break one link in a chain, you don't have the strength of a chain anymore. Or as I've said to our confirmation kids every year since I started doing confirmation, it only takes one generation to go from faithfulness to unfaithfulness. You see that played out over and over again in the scriptures. It only takes one generation to go from faithfulness, walking with the Lord, obeying the commandments of the Lord, enjoying the Deuteronomic blessings of the Lord, to have all that, and then to go to idolatry, murder, sacrificing your kids to Molech, and then being eventually vomited out of the land. It only takes one generation to go from that to the converse. So we have to think generationally and keep the chain intact,
to pass on our faith from one generation to another. Nobody's going to sing Michael W. Smith songs in another 50 years. I mean, when he's dead, it's done. Nobody's going to sing it. The church will still sing A Mighty Fortress. And we have a responsibility to pass on that inheritance to our kids. Say, this is yours. By right, it's yours. People have bled and died so that you can have this. And we want to give it to you, and it will make you the kind of person that you need to be so that you can continue to pass on the faith successfully from one generation to the next. Scriptures talk about the faith once for all delivered to the saints. It's been delivered. Now pass it on. That's our responsibility. And if we're not a church that is thinking generationally, appreciating what's come before us, recognizing it, maintaining it, cherishing it, loving it. It's kind of like my grandmother. She had. I'll end on this story. She had a dining room set that nobody was ever allowed to sit at. She had what my dad called the red velvet rooms, with the red velvet ropes, the red velvet rope rooms. And the living room, she was Italian, the couch was always in plastic, and the dining room was immaculate, and nobody ever ate there. They had a table in the kitchen. And then when my grandparents died, my mom inherited the dining room, and we did the same thing. We had a dining room that nobody was ever allowed to sit at. And I remember about, I guess it was 10 years ago or so, my mom said, "Do you want the dining room set?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll take it, but I just want you to know I'm going to use it." And she went, well, hold on a second. I said, "I just want you to know, if you give it to me, I'm going to use it." Now here, she did end up giving it to us. We also subsequently gave it away. I gave it to my sister because it's actually not that good. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good dining room set. It was interesting. First of all, it was like cardboard. It looked good, but it wasn't good. Second, the lack of use of it, things deteriorate when they don't get used. They have to be used. If they don't use, they're gonna rot away and die. So we got rid of it, and we got something that was actual wood, and we'll be able to give to our kids. And there's rings on it. I got water rings on it already and gouges in it. I don't care. Every gouge is a story about my kids, and reminds me of the family that we raised, and I want them to have that for the years ahead. So we got to think generationally. All right, that's all the time we have. Let me close this in prayer, and then next week we're going to talk about stable, not mercurial, ordered, not egalitarian, creative, not original. Little teaser hook, hopefully bring you back. All right. Father, help us to be the church that you want us to be. Help us to affirm that Christ is King. Help us to recognize the generations that have come before us and the generations that we have a responsibility to lead. Bless us, we ask, as we obey you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All righty, folks. Thank you.